Hey guys, it's Melissa Morrow with Vintage Bee Design, and today I am going to start working on some more of my fence posts. I'm using DIY Paints Dark and Decrepit as a base, and I'm actually going to do several different versions of this with different base colors. So while I'm using the Dark and Decrepit, I am also going to use Crystal Clear Chandelier Liquid Patina by DIY Paint, and this is a clear top coat. Basically, I'm going to seal in the wood. This is old fence wood, and while I have sanded it down and cleaned it so that it does not have any of the mildew or anything that was on it from when it was a fence, I do want to be sure that if there is anything on there, I'm completely sealing it into the boards so that it cannot be open spores. And I'm also going to use Gray Skies by DIY Paint in the cottage colors. This is an all-in-one primer, paint, and top coat all in one. And so I'm going to do these. I've got a bunch of different boards with 3 different base colors, and then I'm going to stencil them all. I'll be using the Rooted in Christ mesh stencil by A Maker Studio, which you can catch at vintagebeedesign.com. We carry all of their mesh stencils, and I'm using DIY Paint's Vintage Linen as the color. I love using DIY Paint for this because it is water activated, which means that when I go to clean my stencils, either between different applications or at the end of the day, because it's water activated, there's never a chance of me ruining my stencils by having dried up paint left in it. You can see because I'm going from board to board to board, I'm just cleaning my stencils carefully in between. Now I will say going over fence wood probably isn't the best application for this because it doesn't have a fully flat surface, so it does leak under in some places, and you'll see how I am going to approach that. I do get asked if these are actually reusable, and you'll see I've done 9 boards here, all pretty quickly. I'm just wiping them in between using my misting bottle to make sure I get all the paint off if I need to, and then adhering it. And not only have I gone 9 boards, but I actually am also going to do a drop shadow where I did the white and now I'm going to do the black over it. This is a great technique because these are really more about screen prints than stenciling. The only part I really had a problem with were the words. They were not visible as much as I wanted them to be. They were not as crisp because this is fence wood, which means it's not flat, it's not perfect. And as a result, you're not going to get perfect adhesion. And since we're screen printing this over, when you're pushing the paint down, it is going to go into those voids and spread a little bit. When I'm done working on this project, I will simply wash this in the sink, making sure I get all of the paint out of the mesh areas, and then I will lay it upside down to dry, and it'll be tacky again, and then I'll just put it back on the paper, and I will put it back into my new filing system, which I discussed last Sunday. Hopefully you caught that video. So on some of these boards where I wasn't happy with not being able to read the text very well, even with the drop shadowing, what I've decided to do is actually use my DIY paint and kind of try to create a little bit more of a flat surface, a less porous surface that the paint would have a better grip on and have less opportunity to sort of slide under the mesh stencil. DIY paint being clay-based is perfect. I'm just going to build up a little bit of height, smooth it out, use the heat dryer to dry it off, and then add another little bit, dry it off, add another little bit, sand it a little bit, and hopefully I will have a good level surface. And now for the moment of truth. I used layered chocolate to create the top coat before, so I'm just going to use that layered chocolate again here on the words. There won't be a drop shadow, but I think you'll see this technique worked out really well. It was about creating a nice level surface. I added simple sawtooth hangers on the back, and now all of these are ready to go. Tell me what you think about these projects, and is this something that you would ever do for markets in your area? I do really like the drop shadow look of these. I think it really makes the image three-dimensional come off of the wood. Sometimes in the print it's a little bit harder to see, but for sure on the tree I really love the look of the drop shadow. Let me know what you think in the comments. For my second project, I have some candlesticks that I purchased wholesale. They were actually handmade, but I purchased them wholesale last year up in Ohio. If you remember that trip, leave a comment below. And this is when I surprised Sue on going to Ohio for a shopping spree for market. And I think they didn't sell because of these little caps. And so Sue is just working on getting these caps in. It has like a 4-inch nail into the middle of these. These were super hard to get out. And I kept waiting for Sue to do something to injure herself in the process. But once we got these out, it's actually a pretty easy process. These were all white, and I've decided I'm going to make them a little more fall ready. So I am using Miss Mustard Seed in the color Outback Petticoat, which is a really pretty orange color, and you'll see that. And I think this will make them perfect for fall. I do want them to be rustic. They are rustic now, and I want them to continue to be rustic. To use Miss Mustard Seed, it is simply equal parts powder to water, and then you give it a mix. I tend to let it sit for a little while, maybe just a few minutes while I'm cleaning the piece or doing something else, getting stickers off, what have you. And then I'll go back and remix it, and it's ready to go. I mixed 3 tablespoons of powder and 3 tablespoons of water for these 4 candlesticks. And I probably could have done less, but I knew that these were going to really soak it up. They had been painted before, but I also know that they're very porous because they're so rustic. Once I have them all painted and dried, I am going to mix up some of Miss Mustard Seed's Ironstone, and this time I'm only going to paint 2 of the candlesticks. 2 of the candlesticks I decided I wanted to leave orange, and 2 of the candlesticks I wanted to have orange underneath and then a white on top. I mentioned these were really porous, and because of that, I know that they are not going to do much chipping. And because of that, I am using some clear wax by DIY Paint, and I am adding it fairly liberally in some areas and then very lightly in others. I don't want to have a specific chip pattern, and so I'm just adding some heavy in some areas so I know there will be chipping, but otherwise I'm just adding a little bit, and then I'm going to paint all of it. Wherever I added wax, if I'd had enough on there, I can guarantee chipping. Without the wax, it is sort of a randomness if there will be enough resist for it to come off. And in my experience, when you were using raw wood or anything porous like raw wood, there will be very little chipping. So I wanted to be sure there was going to be at least some chipping to this so that you would see that orange underneath. So I added a fair amount of wax, and you'll see I didn't get a ton of chipping. I almost wish I would have added a little bit more wax, but I didn't want these super chippy either. They really are rustic enough on their own, as rough hewn as the wood. When these were milled, the wood is very rough, not smooth at all, and so I think there's enough rustic in that. My favorite part about using Miss Mustard Seed really is the chip factor, so I do use a heat gun almost universally to also try to help it get a little more chippy, and I am trying to show you some little chippy bits. There just isn't much chipping on this. In the end, I probably could have used a little more wax. But you know, that's the fun part with Miss Mustard Seed. You never know exactly what you're going to get, which always gives it a more authentic look. Once it is completely dry, I'm going to take some 220 grit sandpaper, and I'm going to give this a pretty thorough sanding. Remember, these were super rough hewn anyway. I do want some chipping, but I also want to smooth it out just a little bit. And I'm going to go ahead and sand the orange ones as well. Now that everything feels a little bit softer and it's ready to go, I'm going to use some of DIY Paint, clear wax, and wax all of the candlesticks. I am going to add a dark wax to the orange candlesticks, not the white ones, but the orange ones, because they're a little bit brighter than I like my fall decor. I think the color is amazing, but not for this project, for what I want to achieve. But it is always a good idea, again, on a porous surface especially, to add clear wax before you add dark wax. This gives you a lot more ability to remove wax if you get it too dark, and it just gives it a better coverage. So if you're ever going to use dark wax, it's always best to add a clear wax first. I am using DIY Paint's dark wax, which is one of my favorite dark waxes. I could have used the black wax here as well. It might have given it a little bit more of a gray tint instead of a brown tint, But again, I'm kind of going for the vintage fall look. So I think that the brown is really nice. You can see how much depth and dimension this antiquing wax adds. And you can also see that I'm lightening up some areas by going back over it with the clear wax. Clear wax can act as an eraser against dark wax if you have clear waxed it first. I just added on some 5-inch rounds that we had cut out with wood glue, and that I used DIY's Dark and Decrepit on to create the nice warm stain on top. I think these came out super charming. What do you think of the color Outback Petticoat? For this project, I'm going to mix up some Schloss. This is Miss Mustard Seed. I'm going to be using this on the next project as well, so I'm making more than I need. This was a really rustic piece that was from last year. It's part of what we picked up in Columbus, Ohio, and for some reason it hadn't sold, so I thought I'd give it a new look. After it's dried, I will just give it a quick distress. I love how all the different pigments really show up on a white background on this piece. Very simple, easy, and pretty. John got his new lathe and decided to make me a mammoth candlestick. This baby is 15.5 inches tall and 6 inches wide. It is a big candlestick. He made it out of 2x4s and it's completely fabulous. I wanted to make sure that this candlestick looked as awesome as it could, so I have painted it up in Miss Mustard Seed's Schloss on the first coat, and that is sort of an earthy taupey color with a little bit of gray, and now I'm adding a fairly significant amount of clear wax. That is the DIY clear wax. I like using the DIY clear wax because it's really nice and soft, and it seeps into the wood really nicely without leaving too much globbiness. And I know that it works really nicely with the Miss Mustard Seed. And so I'm really, again, this is a super porous surface. So one of the things I want you to understand when you work with milk paint is porous surfaces are not going to do much chipping. And I really wanted this to look more like his grandfather made it than he made it. I didn't want it to look fresh off the lathe. So I'm putting quite a bit on here, and I know not all of this, even though I'm lathering it on fairly well, that because this is so porous, that some of that, especially when I add the heat gun, is just going to absorb right into the wood, and it is not going to create chippiness. So I'm adding quite a bit. You'll see not every area is touched because I want to be sure that some of it sticks. But in areas that I want chippy, I'm making sure to actually add a couple layers because the first layer is going to just sort of seep right into the wood. I hope I don't sound like a broken record on this whole wax thing, but I'm just going to say wax is your friend. Clear wax is your friend, especially on these projects. Now I'm going to mix up some more ironstone, and I'm mixing up, again, 3 tablespoons milk paint, 3 tablespoons water. I mix it up a little bit, let it sit, and when you're using light colors like whites, there's not as much pigment in the powder, so you actually can go with a little bit less, but you can see that even just in a couple minutes, it starts absorbing right into that milk powder. And if you didn't know, we do have our old stock of Miss Mustard Seed. It's been reformulated, so all of our old stock is now on sale, 40 to 50% off, and you can pick that up at vintagebedesign.com. Just look for old stock Miss Mustard Seed. So apparently I lost my footage of me actually painting this, but come on, it's painting. This is 1 coat of Miss Mustard Seed over it. I did use the heat gun, and you can see where I added that heavy wax, there's a lot of chipping. Everywhere else, it's mostly cracking. By the way, this is what I always get in trouble for, is just sort of flaking at it. I love just flecking at it with my fingers. There's something wholly satisfying about that. I don't know what it is. Literally, they used to leave signs in the paint room when they were using Miss Mustard Seed, if they left it for the night, with a little sign that said, "Melissa, do not pick at this," because they knew that if I came in and saw all the beautiful chippiness, that I would want to just have the fun of flecking all the paint off. But I am going to give this some clear wax, and then I am going to add some dark wax as well because I want to be sure that you can see all of the cracking and the beautiful chippiness of this piece. Using 220 grit sandpaper, the chippies come off really nicely. You don't want to distress this really any more than it already sort of distresses itself. This is not about pulling off any additional paint. This is just about pulling off the paint that is already loose.
You can come by, I don't know why, but you're sunshine, oh you're right. Oh you're right. I'm gonna shut my mouth when you say what's on your mind. I can see the pain in your eyes. First I'm left, then I'm right. Don't know how to keep my calm, baby, don't.
So what do you think about all the chippy? For me, it's exactly what I envisioned the moment I laid eyes on the candlestick. To me, it looks beautiful and old. Let me know in the comments what you think. By the way, guys, I was given this electric lighter and it's super cool. It's gonna be great because I have grandkids and you know you cannot leave any kind of lighter laying around. This is fun. It works when you get the little blue light and then you click on the button and you see that it creates a little arcing spark, which you can light your candles. By the way, it's a lot easier to light your candles when you're not trying to look through your camera to do it. Depth perception is really tricky that way. But this was super cool. I really liked it. And we're gonna do a giveaway on one of these on our Saturday video. So stay tuned to watch that. Also, you know, I bought these candles for display, but I always think that even display candles look better with burnt wicks. Let me know, do you agree with that? Do you like them not burnt or burnt? I like burnt wicks. I will leave a link in the description for this product as well as all of the other products. For project number 5, I'm going to use some of the boards that I added the dark and decrepit to in project number 1. And I am simply adding clear wax pretty heavily over this. And then I am dry brushing the leftover schloss onto the boards. Basically, I am providing a base coat, but I want this base coat to be chippy so that you see the dark and decrepit underneath. So now I'm going to use Jami Ray Vintage stencil, the canning jar, and I am simply going to stencil using black here. I am using Dixie Belle's Silk Mineral Paint, and that's because it doesn't require a top coat, just sort of saving me a step. And these stencils clean very nicely, so I never really have to worry about them. You know, they're not mesh stencils. They're not going to get clogged by something that has a top coat. So I'm just doing a nice swirling technique, and I have 4 boards. I'm going to stencil this canning jar on all 4 boards. Now I'm going to use the advertising mini labels stencil, and I'm going to tape this off to be sure that the image stays within the confines of my jar. And I am going to do a base here again of the Black Sands mineral paint. I'm then going to do a drop shadow in a white color that is also a silk mineral paint. I believe that this is salt water. Each board, each canning jar will get its own label. And some of these, like these lions, are actually much wider than the canning jar. So I just taped the image so that it would stay within the confines of the canning jar. Once they are all stenciled, I'm going to go ahead and give them a light sand with 220 grit sandpaper. Now, I never sanded them after I did the initial base coat. So you will see that the wood looked a little bit chippy, and now anything that was loose is going to chip off. And for me, I love this look because it means that the items that were on top of the paint, the canning jar images, are also going to chip off, creating a more of a vintage look. For these, because they're already super chippy, I decided just to add clear wax, and that will finish them off completely. When I made these, my original intention was to have 4 unique individual signs, but I left them drying on the table overnight, and when I woke up, I decided that I really kind of wanted them as a singular sign. So I found some old wood in the garage, turned them over, and I'm going to go ahead and just attach this with some 3/4 inch screws, and that the glue will hold them permanently. The screws will hold the wood to the wood until the glue works, and I'm going to make a singular sign. I added some cup hooks on the bottom of each sign and then a hanger on the back, and I think it came out pretty adorable. It wasn't what I had planned, but I actually think I like it a little bit better than individual signs. Let me know in the comments what you think. And here's a look back at all the projects that we got done today. I am really pleased with everything that we got done. Market is just a few weeks away, and I really need to be cranking out product. So I'm very pleased with these. They have the perfect vintage market days look about them, so I think buyers will be happy. Which one is your favorite? For me, it's got to be the tall candlestick that John made for me. I am going to sell this, but I do love it. I think it's absolutely my favorite. I really do like everything that I did. I also really like that white over the orange, the Outback petticoat. Leave a comment in the description to let me know which one you loved. And if you like these Miss Mustard Seed projects, would you like to see more ways of using the milk paint on normal, everyday sort of thrift flip finds? I hope you enjoyed today's projects, and if you did, please be sure to hit like, share, and subscribe.